Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today we will be looking at another component of CSEC Spanish Paper 2, the contextual dialogue. This video will take you through how to complete a contextual dialogue step by step. All right, so let's not waste any time. Let us begin. First, here are some contextual dialogue tips. Number one, read the cues given in the instructions, which will indicate what information needs to be included in the spaces. Number two, read the entire dialogue before attempting to give any responses. Number three, carefully observe what is written above and below the spaces where a reply is required, as they will be indicators of how you should respond. Number four, submit logical and appropriate answers to ensure that the conversation flows. And number five, be concise and avoid adding any unnecessary information in addition to not exceeding the word limit. I hope this is clear so far, guys. Let us continue. Now we're going to look at an example of instructions and contextual dialogue cues from CSEC Spanish, May-June 2023's past paper, okay? All right, so, and it reads, in the blank spaces provided, complete the dialogue between you and your friend's mother. Give your responses in Spanish using between 80 and 100 words. Your friend's mother, Mrs. Marcano, wants to plan a surprise birthday party for your friend and asks for your help. Write the dialogue between you and Mrs. Marcano, giving your responses. So here we have the context about what the dialogue is going to be about, right? So your friend's mother, who is Mrs. Marcano, wants to plan a surprise birthday party for your friend, and she's asking for your help. So this is what the dialogue is going to be about, okay? All right, let's continue. Responses to all of the cues listed below must be included in the completed dialogue. Okay, so here are the cues. Number one, discussion on venue and time of the party. Number two, who will be invited? Number three, activities at the party. Number four, how your friend will be surprised. And number five, inquiry about birthday cake and refreshments. Okay, so above here we have the context of the dialogue, okay, what it's going to be about. And the cues here give us the specific information it wants us to include in the dialogue. Okay, so there's going to be a discussion about the venue and time of the party. There's going to be a discussion about who will be invited. There's going to be a discussion about the activities at the party. There's going to be a discussion of there's going to be a discussion about how your friend will be surprised, and there's also going to be a discussion where somebody is going to inquire about the birthday cake and refreshments. Okay, so this is the entire idea of the dialogue. Here we have the context, and here we have the specific information that the cues want us to include in the conversation. Okay, So I hope that's clear so far. Let us continue. All right, so now we're going to look at an example of a contextual dialogue from CSEC Spanish 2023's past paper, okay? So here we have the entire dialogue, okay? You're not seeing all on one space. So here it says complete the dialogue below. So now, after reading the instructions and the cues, now we have to look at the dialogue, okay? And remember, one of the things that I told you is to read the entire dialogue before trying to give responses, okay? So this is what your entire dialogue is going to look like. So as you can see, you have what Mrs. Marcano says, but the spaces here where you have to give a response is obviously blank because you have to give the responses to complete the conversation, okay, between these two persons. All right. So as you can see, it starts off, Ana va a cumplir 16 años y quiero darle una fiesta de sorpresa. ¿Qué opinas? All right. Make sure you read all of this information, everything that you see written here in Spanish, make sure you read all of that to get an idea what the conversation is about, okay? So this is part of it, and the other half is over here, okay? So this is the other part of the dialogue, okay? And the final part should be over here. Okay, so all of this is the entire dialogue. And when you receive your exam paper and you get to this section of the exam paper, your dialogue, the contextual dialogue, is going to look like this, right? There's going to be the mother's responses, and you're going to see the blank spaces where you have to give a response. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like, okay? So let us continue. So now we're going to be looking at completing a contextual dialogue step by step. Okay, so this is the dialogue that we were looking at previously. So now what we're going to do is complete this entire dialogue. So first thing I want you to do is that you have to read what is written above the blank space and what is written below the blank space, right? So you want to read what is written here and what is written here, so you can have an idea of what kind of response you have to give. And remember, the information that you need to include, you have to look at the cues first to have an idea of what you need to say in these spaces, okay? But first, we're going to read what Señora Marcano says here. It says, Ana va a cumplir 16 años y quiero darle una fiesta de sorpresa. ¿Qué opinas? Anna is going to be 16 years old or she's turning 16, and I want to throw her a surprise party. What do you think? Okay, so that's what Señora Marcano says above here. And below, she says, bueno, estaba pensando en este sábado aquí en casa a eso de las 6 de la tarde. Okay, so, well, I was thinking about this Saturday here at home around 6 in the evening. Okay, so this is what she said below here, right? And we know what she says above. Now, knowing this will give us an idea of what we have to say in this blank space. But first, we need to look at the what? The cues. All right. Always remember before you give a response, always look at the information that the cues want you to include in your dialogue. Okay. So, because we have not written any responses as yet, we know that we have to give a response for the first cue, which says, okay, discussion on venue and time of the party. So this is the information that we need to include. We need to have a discussion about the venue and the time of the party. Okay? So now let's look at our response. So here is what Mrs. Marcano had said previously, right, on the first line. And now here you have the response that we are going to give after she asks this question. ¿Qué opinas? Right? What do you think? Okay. So as you can see here, let's read what she says again. Ana va a cumplir 16 años y quiero darle una fiesta de sorpresa. ¿Qué opinas? Right? So it says Anna is turning 16 and I want to throw her a surprise party. What do you think? Okay? So here we have, me encanta la idea. ¿Cuándo y dónde tendrás la fiesta? ¿Y a qué hora? Okay? So here the response we give is, I love the idea, right? I love the idea. When and where are you having the party? Or when is she hosting the party? Okay. And at what time? Okay. So remember, the cue here is for you to discuss with Mrs. Marcano the venue and the time of the party. Because remember, the cue said discussion on venue and time of the party. After she says that she wants to throw her a surprise party and she asks us for our opinion, here we say, we like the idea, right? I like the idea. And we also want to know when and where the party will take place, right? Where is she having, when and where is she having the party? And we want to specifically know and at what time, right? So with this response, we have fulfilled what the cue has required. Okay, so now a perfect way to make sure that your response is compatible with the dialogue, okay? What you're going to do is that you're going to, after each response, you're going to read again what is written above, okay? Then you're going to read your response. Then you're going to read what is written below to make sure that everything fits perfectly, okay? So, Ana va a cumplir 16 años y quiero darle una fiesta de sorpresa. ¿Qué opinas? Anna is turning 16 and I want to throw her a surprise party. What do you think? Me encanta la idea. ¿Cuándo y dónde tendrás la fiesta? ¿Y a qué hora? I love the idea. When and where will you be holding the party? And at what time? And here we have, bueno, estaba pensando en este sábado aquí en casa a eso de las 6 de la tarde. Well, I was thinking about this Saturday here at home around 6 in the evening. Okay, so now after we have read all of that information, we can see that our response is compatible with what has been written above here and what has been written below. Okay, so it fits perfectly within the context of the dialogue. Now we need to look at what we need to say next, okay? Which is obviously this blank space here, okay? So remember, you always have to read what is written above and what is written below where you have to give a response so you can have an idea of the kind of response that you need to give. As we just read, she said, well, I was thinking about this Saturday here at home around 6 in the evening. And here our space is blank. Now we need to read what she says below. Yo lo sé, pero será más difícil organizarla en la playa. Tal vez podemos tenerla en el club de la comunidad porque allí hay una piscina, pero no sé a quién invitar. So here she says, I know, but it will be harder to organize it at the beach. Perhaps, or you can translate this as perhaps, or maybe we could have it at the community club because there is a pool there. But I don't know who to invite. Okay. So this is the context surrounding where we have to give a response. Now, remember, before you give your response, the main thing that you want to do is read what the cue, what information the cue requires you to include in the dialogue. Okay, so remember, you're not just writing random stuff. You have to let your answers be guided according to the information that the cue wants you to include, okay? So here we are still at number 1, discussion on venue and time of the party. Okay, that's where we are. Okay, so remember, she said here, señora Marcano, bueno, estaba pensando en este sábado aquí en casa a eso de las 6 de la tarde. Well, I was thinking I was thinking this Saturday here at home around 6 in the evening. Okay, that's what she said. And for our response, we have, me parece muy bien, pero ¿no es mejor tener la fiesta en la playa, ya que es el lugar favorito de Ana? That sounds great, but isn't it better to have the party at the beach since it's Anna's favorite place? Okay, so you have to remember that the cue here is for you to discuss with Mrs. Marcano the venue and the time of the party. Okay, so we're still discussing that, and you're going to see why we give this response. Okay, right. So when you look back at the cue, it's going to say discussion on venue and time of the party. Okay, so you're going to see why we have given that response. All right. Now, remember, when you give your responses, you want to read again what is written above. You want to read your response and you want to read what is below your response to make sure that it fits perfectly within the context of the dialogue, okay? Here, señora Marcano says, bueno, estaba pensando en este sábado aquí en casa a eso de las 6 de la tarde. Okay, so well, I was thinking about this Saturday here at home around 6 in the evening. And here we have, me parece muy bien, pero ¿no es mejor tener la fiesta en la playa ya que es el lugar favorito de Ana? So that sounds great, but isn't it better to have the party at the beach given that it's Anna's favorite place or it's Anna's favorite place to be. Yo lo sé, pero será más difícil organizarla en la playa. Tal vez podemos tenerla en el club de la comunidad porque allí hay una piscina, pero no sé a quién invitar. I know, but it would be more difficult or it will be harder to organize it at the beach. Maybe we could have it at the community club because there's a pool there. But I don't know who to invite. After reading that, right, what has been written above here, our response, and also what is written below, we can see that our response fits perfectly within the context of the conversation. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next part of the conversation that we have to do next. Okay, so as you know, this part says, I know, but oh, before I move on. So remember, I just wanted to point out this. So we put this part about the beach, right? Uh, in our response based on what was written below here. Because here, Senora Marcano says, I know, but it'll be harder to organize it at the beach, which means that we would need to mention that in our response. So this response was not random. It was based on the response that we saw below here. This is why it's important to read above and below. And because she gave the response saying that it would be harder to organize it at the beach, we know that we need to include something about the beach in our response. And this is why I have mentioned here in our response that isn't it better to have the party at the beach given that it's Anna's favorite place to be, right? That's why we have that response because it connects this part of the conversation to what has been said below, okay? We give this response because it relates back to what was said here. So that's why in our response we mentioned about we talked about having the party at the beach, okay, based on Senora Marcano's response here about it being more, it would be more difficult or it would be harder to organize it at the beach. So that's why we give that response. So I hope that has cleared up any misunderstandings for anybody. All right, so let's continue. So now you know that we have to give a response for this blank space. We already know that this part says, I know, but it will be harder to organize it at the beach. Maybe we can have it at the community club because there's a pool there. But I don't know who to invite. Okay, so the last thing she said is that in response to what we said here, she said it would be more difficult or be hard to organize it at the beach. But she says maybe we could have it at the community club because there's a pool there. And the last thing she says is that she doesn't know who to invite. Okay. Now, after that, our response here is blank. This is where we have to give our response, right? But remember, you have to read what is below just in case you need to get an idea based on what was said here to include particular information into your response, okay? So here it says, bueno, tú te encargas de invitar a los amigos y a esta profesora de quien hablaste y yo invitaré a los parientes. ¿Y qué actividades podemos tener que puedan interesar a todos? Well, you'll be in charge of inviting her friends and the teacher that you mentioned. And I'll invite the relatives or the family members. And then the follow-up question is, and what activities can we have that could interest or appeal to everyone? Okay. So now, based on what was said here, we should have an idea of what kind of response we need to give here. But remember, the thing you want to do before you give your response here is you want to look at the cues again, okay? So you can see that we have crossed out the first one, a discussion on venue and time of the party. Okay, and now we're looking at cue number 2. Who will be invited? Remember, because she said she doesn't know who to invite. So this is obviously cue number 2. This is where cue number 2 comes in. Okay, so let's continue. So here you have what she says. Yo lo sé, pero será más difícil organizarla en la playa. Tal vez podemos tenerla en el club de la comunidad porque allí hay una piscina, pero no sé a quién invitar. Okay, I know, but it will be harder to organize it at the beach. Maybe we could have it at the community club since there's a pool there, but I don't know who to invite. Okay, and for our response, we have invitemos a sus mejores amigos del colegio y a su profesora favorita, la que siempre menciona. Okay, so let's invite her best friends from school and her favorite teacher, the one she always talks about. Okay, so remember that the cue here is for you to discuss who will be invited. Remember, that's what cue number 2 is all about. And remember also the last thing she said is that she doesn't know who to invite. So now we're giving a suggestion saying let's invite her best friends from school and her favorite teacher, the one she always talks about. The one she always talks about. Okay, so this is the suggestion, right? And you can see we're having this discussion of who will be invited. Now let's see if our response fits within the context of the dialogue. So here you can see this is where we have placed our response. Remember, in order to know if your response fits perfectly within the context of the dialogue, you want to read what's above, okay? What's above the response that you give. You read your response and what is written below to know if it fits perfectly within the context, okay? So here, as you know, we have I know, but it will be harder to organize it at the beach. Maybe we could have it at the community club because there's a pool there, but I don't know who to invite. Okay. So let's invite her best friends from school and her favorite teacher, the one she always mentions or the one she always talks about. And then the mother says, well, you'll be in charge of inviting the friends. That's a literal translation. That's a literal translation. Well, you'll be in charge of inviting her friends and that teacher that you mentioned. Okay. And I will invite the relatives or the family members. Okay. And what activities could we do that could appeal to everyone? Okay. So you can see when you read all three of these, okay, what is written above where we give our response and what is written below, you can see that our response fits perfectly within the context of what was said, okay? So, you know that based on what she says here, when she says, well, you will handle inviting her friends, all right, the friends, and this teacher that you mentioned. As you can see, we mentioned her favorite teacher, and we mentioned about her friends. So because of that, it fits perfectly, right? With the response that was given here. So it fits perfectly within the context of the dialogue. So now we have to give a response here. And this is obviously a response to this question where she asks, uh, and what activities, right, can we have that could interest or appeal to everyone? All right, so here's where we have to give a response. And as you guys know by now, you have to read what she says below, right? You have to read what she says below. So here she says, son excelentes ideas. ¿Me puedes ayudar a escoger la música y los juegos? No conozco estos juegos, pero ¿cómo vamos a sorprender a Ana? Okay, so they are excellent ideas. All right. Can you help me choose or select the music and the games? I don't know those games, but how are we going to surprise Anna? So, based on what was said here, whatever we say here must relate or must be related, right, or connected to the response that Mrs. Marcano gives here, okay? And important to note, she says, these are excellent ideas. And then she was talking about, can you help me select the music and the games, okay? And she says, I don't know those games, okay? So remember, here, what activities could we do that can interest everyone or appeal to everyone? And then she says, after we give our response here, which is blank, she's going to say, those are excellent ideas. Can you help me select the music and the games? I don't know those games, etc. Okay? So remember, before we attempt to give a response, we need to look at the cues, okay? So the cue that we have to fulfill is activities at the party. So we've completed discussion on venue and time of the party. We have completed who will be invited. That is finished. Now we are going to fulfill cue number 3, which is activities at the party, okay? So now, as you guys know here, right, we're looking at what Mrs. Marcano said, which is, bueno, tú te encargas de invitar a los amigos y a esta profesora de quien hablaste. Y yo invitaré a los parientes. ¿Y qué actividades podemos tener que puedan interesar a todos? Okay, all right. You handle inviting her friends and the teacher you mentioned, and I'll invite the relative. I'll invite the relatives or family members. And what activities can we have that might appeal to everyone? So after that, the response we give is, podemos organizar juegos de mesa como Monopoly y tener un karaoke para que todos canten sus canciones favoritas. Además, podemos hacer una sesión de fotos con disfraces divertidos. Okay, so which means we could organize board games like Monopoly and have karaoke so that everyone could sing their favorite songs. We could also do a photo shoot with fun costumes. So remember, guys, the cue here is for you to discuss the activities at the party. Okay? This is what the cue required us to do. Okay, so now we're going to read this response in the dialogue to see if it fits well within the context of the conversation. Okay, so as you can see here, after she says, okay, well, you'll handle, or all right, you'll handle, or you'll be in charge of inviting her friends and that this teacher that you mentioned, and I'll invite the family members or the relatives. Then she says, and what activities can we do, or sorry, can we have that might interest everyone, right? Or might appeal to everyone. And for our response, we can organize some board games. We can organize board games like Monopoly, have karaoke so that everyone can sing their favorite songs. In addition, we can have a photo shoot with fun costumes, right? And you can see here, after this response, she says, son excelentes ideas. Those are excellent ideas. Can you help me select or choose the music and the games? I don't know those games, okay? But how are we going to surprise Anna? Okay, so with this response, when we read what is written above here and what is written below here, we can see that this response that we have given fits perfectly within the context of the conversation. Okay, now we have to move on to the next point. And obviously, this is in relation to where she asked the question at this part of the dialogue, where she says, but how are we going to surprise Anna? Okay, so that's where we have to give our response. And as you guys know by now, you have to read what is written below, get an idea of what she says after where we give our response, so we can know if there's any additional information we need to include in our response. So here she says, excelente, le encanta ir de compras contigo y estoy segura de que querrá encontrarse con sus amigos allá en la piscina después. Okay, which means great. She loves going shopping with you, and I'm sure that she will want to meet up with her friends there at the pool afterwards. Okay, so with that in mind, we have an idea of the kind of response that we have to give here. But also we need to look at the cue because we need to know what information the cue wants us to include. Remember, your responses are not random. They must be guided by the cues. Must be guided by the cues. Please remember that, guys. Okay, so let's look at the cues. Okay, so as you can see, the cue that we are going to follow now, because all of these other cues have been completed, is how your friend will be surprised. And remember, the question that we have to respond to is when the mother asks you, how are we going to surprise Anna? So we know that this is the correct cue that that is going to be guiding us, right, with regards to what response we are going to give. Okay, so this is the cue that we need to follow. Okay, so now we are going to look at our response, but first we're going to read again what the mother said. Those are great ideas. Can you help me choose the music and the games? Can you help me choose the music and games? I'm not familiar with these games, but how are we going to surprise Anna? Okay, so now for our response, we have, podría llevarla de compras ese día para distraerla. Luego, cuando lleguemos al club, todos la estarán esperando. No sospechará nada porque pensará que es solo un día normal conmigo. Right? So this says I could take her shopping that day to keep her distracted. Then, when we get to the club, everyone will be waiting for her. She won't suspect a thing because she'll think it's just a normal day with me. So remember, the cue here is for you to discuss. We don't have that there. The cue here is for you to discuss how your friend will be surprised. Okay? How your friend will be surprised. Now we're going to look to see if that response fits within the context of the dialogue. Okay, so first we look above here where it says, those are excellent ideas. Can you help me choose the music and the games? I'm not familiar with those games, but how are we going to surprise Anna? All right. Then we have, I can take her shopping on that day to distract her. After that, when we arrive to the club or when we get to the club, everyone will be waiting there. Everyone will be waiting for her. And she will not suspect a thing because she will think it's just a normal day with me. Excellent. She loves to go shopping with you, and I'm sure that she will want to meet up with her friends there at the pool afterwards. So you can see that our response fits perfectly within the context of the conversation because you see that she says, excellent after she says great. She says she loves to go shopping with you, which is something we mentioned here is where we said, I could take her shopping on that day to distract her. Okay? So those two things are related. And then she says, I'm sure that she will want to meet up with her friends there at the pool afterwards. And as you can see, that matches perfectly with what we said here. Okay, so it's sufficient. Okay, and it fits perfectly within the context of the conversation. Okay, so this is the next part we have to give a response to. Okay, so as you know, read above, read below, right? As you know, she says here, great. Um, she loves to go shopping with you, and I'm sure she will want to meet up with her friends there at the pool afterwards. Okay. Then here we have to give our response. And then here Mrs. Marcano says, woe is me, or oh shoot, I forgot. Could you help me with that? You will know what kind of cake she would like or she would want. Okay, so as you can see here, if you pay close attention, on this paper, they want us to ask a question. So you see that question that we ask here is related to her reaction. So we need to ask a question in our response. That's why you have the question marks there. So in our response, we need to ask a question, okay? Just keep that in mind. So remember, before trying or attempting to give your response, we must first look at the cues again. So as you can see, we have completed cue number 1, 2, 3, 4. We're no longer discussing how Anna will be surprised. It's all about an inquiry, right? So you have to inquire about the birthday cake and refreshments. This is what we have to do. This is the kind of information we need to include in our response, okay? So now for our response. Now, looking back at what she said here, before we look at our response, excelente, le encanta ir de compras contigo y estoy segura de que querrá estoy segura de que querrá encontrarse con sus amigos allá en la piscina después. Great. She loves to go shopping with you, and I'm sure she'll want to meet up with her friends at the pool afterwards. All right. And here we have for our response, así es. And then for the question, because remember, if you remember when we were looking at the paper, there were question marks which indicated that we need to ask a question. So the question that we ask here is, ¿ya has decidido qué torta y refrescos vas a comprar? Indeed. Have you decided what cake and refreshments you're going to buy? So remember, the cue here is for you to make an inquiry about the birthday cake and the refreshments. Okay, so let's see how that fits within the context of the conversation. Okay, so as you know, here she says, great, she loves to go shopping with you. I'm sure that she will want to meet up with her friends there at the pool afterwards. And here our response we have. So, indeed, have you already decided what cake and refreshments you're going to buy? And she says, ay de mí, se me olvidó. ¿Me puedes ayudar con esto? Tú sabrás qué tipo de torta a Ana le gustará. Okay, so woe is me, or oh shoot, I forgot. Could you help me with that? You'll know what kind of cake Anna would like, right? So you can see that this fits well within the context of the conversation. Because when we mention this question here, have you decided what cake and refreshments you're going to buy? And she was like, oh, shoot, I forgot. Can you help me with that? You will know what kind of cake Anna would like, right? So you can see our response fits perfectly within the context of the conversation. And así es, is a response to what Mrs. Marcano said here. So we give this response, okay? This part of the response is related to what she says here. And this part of the response is related to what is said here. So this is why I keep saying it's important to read what is written above and what is written below, right? So you can have an idea of what kind of response you need to give in the blank spaces, okay? So now we are going to move on to the next part. So we already know that she says here, oh shoot, I forgot. Could you help me with that, right? You will know what kind of cake Anna would like. So you can see here again, there are also question marks here again. So we have to ask a question. So we know we have to ask a question, okay? So, and reading Mrs. Marcano's response, she says, gracias, mi amor, pero yo preparé la comida y compraré las bebidas. So, thanks, honey, but I'll prepare the food and I'll purchase the drinks. So, whatever she says here is in relation to what we have to say here, okay? So now remember, before giving our response, always look at the cue. And we are still here on the final cue, which is about inquiring about the birthday cake and refreshments, okay? Okay, so now we are going to look at our response. As you guys would know, I may keep going over this. We keep going over what she says here, but it's important to always read what she says and then look at the response after, which she says, ay de mí, se me olvidó, me puedes ayudar con esto, tú sabrás qué tipo de torta a Anna le gustará, right? Woe is me, I forgot. Can you help me with that? You'll know what kind of cake Anna would like, okay? And here in our response, we say, or we said, claro, ya que ella es adicta a la torta de chocolate. ¿Quieres que yo compre la torta, unas tapas, una gran pizza y algunos jugos naturales? Okay, which means, of course, since she's addicted to chocolate cake, do you want me to buy the cake, some tapas or finger foods, a large pizza, and some natural juices? So remember, the cue here, guys, is for you to make an inquiry about the birthday cake and refreshments, right? And that's basically what this discussion is about. We mentioned the cake here, right? And we are asking about the refreshments and stuff, right? The food and refreshments, yeah. So let's see if that fits perfectly within the context of the conversation. So as you know, she says, woe is me, or oh shoot, I forgot. Can you help me with that? You would know what kind of cake Anna would like. Okay, and we have, of course, since she's addicted to chocolate cake, do you want me to buy the cake, some tapas, a large pizza, and some natural juices? And then Mrs. Marcano says, gracias, mi amor, pero yo preparé la comida y compraré las bebidas. As you can see, our response fits perfectly in the context because after we give our response here, this first sentence is related to what was said here, right? Claro, ya que ella es adicta a la torta de chocolate, right? This is a response to what was said here. And now our question is related to what was said below. As you can see, we said, ¿quieres que yo compre la torta, unas tapas, una gran pizza y algunos jugos naturales? Right? And then she says, gracias, amor. Right? Gracias, mi amor, pero yo preparé la comida y compraré las bebidas. Thanks, honey, but I'll prepare the food and I'll buy the drinks. Right? So what we said here fits perfectly within the context of the conversation. Okay? So now, the last part here, the last space where we have to give a response. You know the drill. Read above, read below. You know what she says here. Thanks, honey, but I'll prepare the food and I'll buy the drinks. Okay. So and below where we have to give a response, she says, thank you, or below where we have to give a response, she says, gracias por tu ayuda, querida. Mañana te llamo para hablar más de la fiesta. Okay, so thanks for your help there. Tomorrow, I'm going to call you to talk more about the party, or to talk about the party in more detail, anything like that, right? So that is the context of the conversation, right? And we know the last cue the only cue that we have to fulfill is this one because this is the only remaining cue. Inquiry about birthday cake and refreshment. In this case, we're basically just having a discussion. We're not really asking, but we're having a discussion at this point, okay? Because there were no indicators that we need to ask a question at this point. Yeah. So, as you can see here, she says, gracias, mi amor, pero yo preparé la comida y compraré las bebidas. And compraré las bebidas, right? Thanks, sweetheart, but I'll prepare the food and buy the drinks, okay? And for our response, we have perfecto. En ese caso, te voy a ayudar a preparar la comida, okay? Perfect. In that case, I'll help you prepare the food. And her response is, gracias por tu ayuda, querida. Mañana te llamo para hablar más de la fiesta. Thanks for your help there. I'll call you tomorrow to discuss the party in more detail. So remember, in regards to our response, the cue here is for you to make an inquiry about the birthday cake and refreshments. So now we're going to look to see how well that fits within the conversation, where she says, gracias, mi amor, pero yo preparé la comida y compraré las bebidas. Right? So thank you, sweetheart. But I'll prepare the food and I'll buy the drinks. Right? Perfect. In that case, I'll help you prepare the food. Right? And then she says, thank you for your help there. I'll call you tomorrow to discuss the party in more detail. And with that, we have fulfilled all the requirements of the queue, and we can see that this response fits perfectly within the context of the conversation. All right? So guys, as you can see here, all the cues have been fulfilled. All the responses have been provided. Okay? All right, guys. So now you can see what a completed dialogue looks like. Okay? So I went through all of the different, every sentence, every question, and I provided you with a translation for every response and everything that was said by Mrs. Marcano, so you understand the context of the entire dialogue, right? So when you have time, or if you want to, you can go back over the entire thing. I'm talking about just the completed dialogue. To look at it slowly, you can pause the video to see those parts and read everything and see how the dialogue flows, okay? All right, guys. Got to big up on Splash for all the wonderful images you saw in this PowerPoint presentation. And the contextual dialogue question obviously is from CSEC Spanish 2023. So we got a big up on Splash and we got a big up CSEC for the past paper. All right. So guys, gracias por tu atención y nos vemos. No way.